Thank you, Karen, and thank you to our local missions team. I tell you, welcome to Salem Grace. This is a great place to be a part of, and I'm glad that you're here. And I love the fact that we have, we're trying to do more things to where we can be missional, not only globally, but in our local presence as well, and domestically. And we do some things around the country that we've done. But I tell you, I love being a part of a church that is compassionate and that cares for people and sees a need. And so we're looking for different ways to do that. So if you have ideas or thoughts on ways that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ to our community and the surrounding areas, that's exactly what we want to be, because here at Salem Grace, it's not about us. It is not about just coming in here and having church so that we can say that we can have church and feel good about ourselves and that type of thing. But I tell you, I love being a part of that, and I love that you're here. Hopefully that you love that you're a part of this place too, and that you've come here this morning. It's a great day to be at church this morning. I was kidding people earlier. I said, when we get in here and everybody gets sat down, I'm going to make an announcement. Everybody should just grab their chair and let's go outside. Because it's so beautiful outside, right? We should have church outside. And somebody said, well, the people that are sitting in the folding chairs will be much happier at that point than they are right now. But I'm so excited to be here. And whether you're new or I don't know if you're new here this morning, or maybe you've come for a while and you've not connected, I wanted to declare today, in addition to Mother's Day, I wanted to declare today as Amnesty Day. And what that means is I want to take, I think it's so easy for us to come in here each and every Sunday, and you sit in the same spot and you talk to the same people, and there are so many people around this congregation that you don't know. So, and here's what I always hear when I tell people about, well, why don't you introduce yourself to somebody? And they say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to introduce myself to somebody that I feel like that I should know. Have you ever done that? Like, you introduce yourself to somebody, or somebody runs into you at Walmart and they talk to you for 5 minutes because they recognize you from church, and then you leave and your wife says, who is that? And you're like, I have no idea who that was, but I think I go to church with him. Today is the day. So we're going to declare Amnesty Day, and what that means is that we all agree, raise your right hand. No, okay, we all agree that we are not going to be offended if somebody introduces ourselves to them and feel like they should know us, right? So see somebody today. I'm going to challenge you today to do that. After the service, you guys make a beeline out of here, and I know you got plans maybe for Mother's Day and that type of thing, but the men of our church, Travis Gillett, I shouldn't have probably said that you fixed breakfast this morning, Travis. I probably shouldn't have let that out of the bag. Somebody said it's probably going to be squirrel gravy, but I won't tell you who said that, Travis. But it's going to be squirrel gravy. We got biscuits and gravy for you today over in the cafe today. To encourage you to stay and just get to know one another. I challenge each and every one of you today to introduce yourself to somebody you don't know, because I guarantee there's somebody you don't know sitting here this morning, and we just had Amnesty Day, so nobody's going to be offended if they feel like you should know him. Okay? We agree with that? All right. Well, hey, welcome. Happy Mother's Day. I'm glad that you're here. Mother's Day is a great time. I know it can be a difficult time for some, but I was blessed with a wonderful mother, and I wanted to share one of my favorite mother stories is when I was a kid. I was probably in first or second grade, and we would get mad at Mom for something. I don't know, Farron and I, she would make us do chores or something, and we would just get ticked off at Mom. And so we would just say, our answer to that was, okay, that's fine, we're running away. Anybody ever do that when you're a kid? I'm running away. Like, I would tell Mom, Farron and I were like, that's it, we're running away. And she's like, okay. And this is no lie, my sweet mother, if you know my mother, she's sweet as pie. She would like, okay, well, let me get your bag. And she would... No kidding. She would go get a bag and help us pack things, and then she would pack us a lunch in an empty Twinkie box. Like there were like 2 Twinkies left, and so she would just pack us a lunch in there, and she would pack us, no kidding, she would pack us a bag, and I can remember very vividly when I was in first or second grade, it was like this leather bag, and I would pack it, I would put stuff, and I always, I don't know why, but I had this, one of those really old, alarm clocks with the 2 bells on the top, one of those type of alarm clocks. And some people are like, I've never seen one of those. Then you're too young. You mean it's not on your phone? No. But it was a Happy Smile alarm clock, and I always packed my alarm clock, because when you are on the run, you have got to stay on a schedule. And... I don't know why I packed the alarm clock, but I can remember very vividly. And she would just stand at the back door and go, "Bye, kids. I love you." And she would send, and we would like, "Man, I can't even believe she's just going to let us." And so we would walk off into the weeds, out to the woods, and then pretty soon we'd see Dad pull up, and we're like, "Okay, let's go home." Um, But without fail, she was always there to give us tough love when we needed it. But I'm so blessed to have a wonderful Christian mother that raised us right. And I know it can be a difficult day for some, but we all had mothers. And so this week we are in a second week of a sermon series called Divine Direction. And it's something that has just been weighing on me very heavily. I told somebody this morning I'm reading like 4 different books. I'm trying to, in addition to my Bible reading and my devotion, I'm reading stuff, and I think sometimes, when we're seeking direction in our lives, whatever that is, and we talked last week, we kicked that series off, so if you weren't here last week, we talked about that, but I talk to people all the time who are wondering what God's plan is for their life. And what it is that they want God, what is it, God, that you want me to do? What would you have me to do? Or maybe they're facing some kind of life-altering decision in their life, and we're wrestling with that. Should we sell our house? Should we downsize? Should I go to college? Should I major in this? Should I major in that? Should I get married? Should I break up with this person? We have all these decisions that we're faced with in our life, and I think the fact of the matter is we're all struggling with that. And even as your pastor, I often think about not only my direction and the direction of my family, but the direction of this family, this church, and where we're headed as a church. And really, I like to think about where we were going to be, not just for today, but I'm always trying to think about what are we going to be like in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Where do we want to be as a church? How are we reaching? And you heard of the mission moment this morning, and those are some of the things that we're trying to do to get outside of these walls and really impact our community. And so that weighs on us heavily. And I think the reality of it is our future is defined by the choices and the decisions that we make today, isn't it? So like some of the things that we do today will impact who we are in the future and where we go. And I had a couple quotes last week that I shared with you, and it's the decisions that we make today will determine the stories we tell tomorrow, and that we make our own decisions, and our decisions make us. And so, we talked, if you weren't here last week, we talked about that really that God doesn't really care so much about what we do as opposed to who we are. He really cares about who we are as individuals and the type of people that we're becoming versus really what we do or what we can say we do. And he's really interested in the why before the what. So, we struggle, and I talked last week, we struggle to make decisions sometimes because there are too many options. We have so many different options, available to us today, and we can go 100 different directions and 100 different ways, and we're faced with those different choices. And I think there's something else, too, that impacts our decisions, and I think it's this. It's the illusion of perfection that really this generation that's grown up now, opposed to any other generation ever in our history of the world, has something I think that has changed, whether we like it or not, has changed the landscape of who we are and as people, and that's social media. We have social media, that we have this instant window into people's lives and instant visuals of really what people see about us. But really what it is, it's an illusion of perfection, because we post things that we want people to see, don't we? We post the good stuff. We post, there's this illusion of perfection, I think, that somehow plays into our decision making. We get on social media and we see that stuff and we're like, man, look at that family. They're on some other perfect holiday or some kind of perfect vacation. Why can't we do that? Or they've got some new car, or they just graduated and, got this degree, and, they have this perfect relationship that we see. Why can't our marriage look like their marriage? Or you see some kind of Pinterest thing, and why can't my house look like that house? And why can't, why don't I have that thing? And so we have this image or this illusion of perfection that's distorting. We basically are seeing the highlight reel of people's lives. We're basically seeing on social media, played out in social media, the highlight of people's lives. And it's impacting our ability to make good decisions and God's perfect will. And I think, here's the thing, I think we have this perception of this illusion of perfection in God's will for our lives. We believe that there's this perfect will that God has for our life, and we're afraid that we're going to mess that up. That somehow we're going to mess that up and we're not going to be in line with God's perfect will for our lives, and that's going to impact us, and we're going to mess that up, and we're going to somehow blow it, by doing what we're doing. Or we have this perfect person for our life, and then maybe you feel like you've married the wrong person. You're like, well, I just blew it. That there's somehow we've come to this belief that maybe there's just one person, that there's this one perfect person that God has for us, and if out of all the millions of people in this world, if we don't find that one person, we're going to blow it. But there's this illusion of perfection that impacts us. And so, but here's the good thing, and here's the encouraging thing, is that when you become a Christian and you give your life to Jesus Christ, all of that begins to work itself out. And you give your life to God, He clearly shows us exactly what to do all the time. And He always makes our life perfect, and we have everything right in step, right? As Christians? Does anybody believe that happens? Like, because we're a Christian, everything's just going to fall right in place. And because we serve God, we have this perfect vision into our future, and we never are going to struggle with decisions, and we're never going to wrestle, right? All of that I just said was a lie. Because He doesn't do that all the time. It doesn't happen that way as Christians, right? Even though you've given your life to God, all of a sudden your life doesn't magically become this fairy tale, and all of a sudden you have crystal clear vision of what God wants in your life, and He lays it all out to you in black and white, and you get a letter in the mail from God, and it says, here, Trent, this is what I want you to do. Doesn't happen that way, does it? But we have this, we want that so bad. We want so badly for God to do that, and He wants us to give us all the answers, but we struggle with why things happen in our lives, and it's not always, the path isn't always smooth. We have problems, we have resistance, we have struggles, and so I want to talk a little bit about that this morning and how we get to that, and really my sermon title today is Wisdom to Discern, and really talking about the wisdom that God gives us. But I think we have this perception that God is going to lay it all out for us. And I want to tell you about Paul. And if you don't know who Paul is, Paul was a guy, basically just to give you some background, some of you may or not know who, we talk about Paul a lot because he really wrote a lot of the New Testament. He's really responsible for writing most of the New Testament that you have in your Bible. And he was a guy named Saul who had an experience with Jesus. But he had this experience with Jesus after he had been crucified. We just came through Easter. Jesus was crucified, He resurrected, and He appeared before Saul and blinded him on this road. And his name was Saul, and then he had this experience with Jesus, and it changed who he was. Because the guy before, Saul, was this guy who persecuted Christians. He didn't want anything to do with Christianity. He didn't believe in the nonsense. His goal was to persecute Christians until he had this experience with Jesus Christ that he did a 180 and completely became one of the most influential leaders in our church's history, and really started churches, and really the foundation of what we have here today that we call church started with Paul. And it started with this guy. So if there's anybody that would have direction, it would be him, right? You would think if you look back and you said, hey, I bet God was laying it out for Paul. He was telling him, hey, this is where I want you to go. This is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to do it. This is how long you're going to stay. He's going to give all the answers to Paul, right? Because he wrote most of the New Testament. He was a guy that was in touch with Jesus. He changed history, really. You would think that this guy had it all together. But we get a different picture of that in 1 Corinthians 16, chapter 6 through 9, and it says this. And this is what Paul is talking to some people in Corinthians. And I want you to just pay attention to what he says in this verse and some of the words he uses about his future and where he's headed, okay? Listen to this. And I underlined some words for you here to make it easier. In verse 6, it says, perhaps, maybe, in other words, perhaps I will stay with you for how long? A while. I don't know how long. Or even spend the winter. I don't even know. So that you can help me on my journey wherever I go. For I do not want to see you now and make only a passing visit. I hope to spend some time with you if the Lord permits, but will stay at stay on at Ephesus until Pentecost, because the great door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many who oppose me. So all of those words in Paul's thing, he's talking to the Corinthians here, and he's saying, hey, I don't really know where I'm going. In other words, I don't know what God's got in store for me. I don't know if I'm going to be here for a little while. I don't know if I'm going to be here a long time. I don't know where I'm going after this. All I know is there are people that oppose me. I've got difficulties. I've got struggles. I'm just kind of feeling my way through this thing. You ever feel like that in life? You ever feel like you're just kind of feeling your way through life sometimes? You don't really have a solid direction. God hasn't laid out a crystal clear plan, but you're just making decisions as you go through life and trying to do your best. I think that's where Paul was. He's saying, tell me what to do. Will you give me wisdom to decide? Another guy I want to tell you about this morning is Solomon. Solomon was a guy who became king, and really God, in a dream said, hey, actually what Solomon did was he became king, and it was customary to offer a sacrifice when you become king. And so Solomon wanted to go above and beyond the normal sacrifice, so he was an overachiever. And what he did was he sacrificed 1,000 animals. 1,000. People were eating good. No, I don't. There was 1,000. I mean, how'd you like that guy, the sacrifice guy? That was a long day on the sacrifice altar, right? 1,000 bulls. Oh, seriously? Bring them on in. It's a lot of livestock, but he went above and beyond, and because that, the Lord appeared to him and said, God will give you anything you want. How'd you like that? How'd you like to get that? Hey, God's going to give you, you just name it. Name whatever you want. God's going to give it to you. And that's what he did with Solomon. And if you know the story of Solomon, he asked for what? Wisdom. Right? He asked for wisdom. Here it is. And here's what Solomon said about wisdom. He didn't ask for wealth or riches or honor or long life or death for his enemies or anything like that. He asked for wisdom to rule his kingdom. Verse 7 of Proverbs chapter 4 says, getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do, and whatever else you do, develop good judgment. So let me ask you this. How many here this morning would say that you are wiser now than you were 10, 15, 20 years ago? Show of hands. Comes with age, right? Right? We kind of do that. Let me ask you another question. How much of that wisdom came from making really, really bad decisions? Some hands are like, yes, right here. Yes, that's it. I've made some really bad ones. I have stunk my life up to this point, but I'm trying not to do different. But we do, right? We make really bad decisions sometimes, and we learn from that. Someone told you not to touch the stove at some point in time in your life, but you wanted to. I want to touch the stove, and I'm going to do it. And so you did it, and you got burned, and now you're like, I don't want to touch the stove anymore. We do things like that over and over, and how about this? Anybody ever said this? We've learned lessons the hard way. But anybody ever said this? These words. Have you ever said these words? I wish I knew now what? Finish it, right? What I knew then, right? Or I wish I knew. Did I say that right? I'm back. I messed it up. If I knew then what I know now, right? I knew you knew how to say it. Even though I didn't. We say that all the time, right? And I mentioned this to the band this morning before we got in here, but I just wonder if you could go back right now and talk to yourself 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, what would you say to yourself? I think I would shake myself and say, what are you? Listen to me. I would grab myself by the neck of the collar and just shake myself and say, listen, do it this way. Because we make really dumb decisions over the course of our life, don't we? I just wonder, just honestly, how many of you think that you would listen to your future self? Back then. I don't know. It's weird. It's like a whole Back to the Future type of thing. But Solomon is saying here, and we get wisdom, I think, as we get older. We learn from our mistakes, and we learn from those really bad decisions that we've made over time. But if you ever, what Solomon is saying here in Proverbs chapter 4 is get wisdom above anything else. It's more valuable than gold. You say, God, show me what to do. I want divine direction. God will not always show you what to do, but he will give you wisdom to decide. Do you understand that? He gives us the wisdom that we need to make the appropriate decision at the right time if we're walking in step with him. And I want to talk about three thoughts this morning for directional wisdom. And I think if you're seeking direction in your life, and I don't know if you guys can relate to this. Hopefully you can relate to this message series, but I think at some point in time, you guys are probably, at some point in time, I think we're always in some kind of constant decision-making process. You know, Cheryl and I sat down this week, probably the first time in our life, and talked to a financial advisor, which was weird because it's like, you know, I had this 401k that from the bank, and I had to do something with it, and you know, I'm not super smart. And so we sat down, but you seek wisdom. And it's interesting. I think as we get older, we begin to take a little bit more decision. But here's the first thing I want to share with you. There's three things that I want to share with you this morning. Three thoughts for directional wisdom. The first one is out of Proverbs chapter 13:20. And we find this in Scripture. And it says this: walk with the wise and become wise. Isn't that true? For a companion of fools suffers harms. You ever seen a companion of fools? You ever seen a group of people and you're like, oh, that group is no good? Have you ever seen a bunch of people walking together or running together and you're like, they are up to no good? That is just not a good situation. Caden's at the age where he's starting to, he's coming in and he's like, hey, you got a couple bucks? I'm going to Taco Bell. And we're like, who are you going with? And he starts to tell us who he's going with. And Cheryl's like, hold on. Are you sure you want to go with him? Are they good people? Because we're concerned about who we walk with. And there's a phrase that I've read, but it says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Who we walk with matters. Who you walk with on a daily basis matters. Who your friends are matter. Who the people you're surrounding yourself with matters. Because why? Because a companion of fools suffers harm. If you're going to be successful and walk with Christ, you cannot continue to be companions with fools and people that aren't. It's almost impossible to live the right life when you have the wrong friends. Do you understand that? It's almost impossible. You can't do it. It's almost impossible to live a right life and surround yourself with the wrong people. I counsel with people from time to time, and it's an individual that I was counseling with, and they had this habitual addiction in their life, and we're really trying to overcome it. Wanted to do really good things, prayed, asked Christ into their life, confessed their sins. It was a beautiful thing. We're really determined to try to and I really wanted to walk with that person. And I began to talk to them about who their friends were. And they're like, well, yeah, I still am hanging out with these people. And they were coming to church on a regular basis. They were here doing a really good job and, giving them a Bible, and they were reading their Bible and really starting to grow individually. But they really couldn't separate their friends. It was too hard for them. They couldn't come to the decision that following Christ was more important than the people that they were running around with. And the fact of the matter is that person is no longer here. They're no longer in church. They're no longer even trying. It's almost impossible to live the right life when you have the wrong friends. You walk with the wise, you become wise. And here's the thing. It's not just asking the wise for advice. There have been people in my life that I surround myself with, and there are different people that I don't know if about you, but there are different people in my life that I look to and I'm like, man, I need some of what they have. My dad was one of them. You glean stuff from those type of people. But I'm not talking about just asking people for advice, from time to time. I'm talking about getting engaged with the right people, getting engaged in a grow group, in a body of believers that say, hey, we are working toward growing in our relationship with Christ. If you don't have that in your life, it's a concept that we run from the top down here. You can go to our children's class back here and find that they're in grow groups. They're in groups. You can come on here on Wednesday night and see 150 high school teenagers, 120 or whatever we have on a Wednesday night, and you'll see that they are involved in grow groups. They're involved with groups of people that are walking through life with them, that are in their same peer group, that are trying to get to know and sharpen iron, sharpening iron. We need other strong believers in our life. If you don't have that, you have to get that. You know, here's the thing. We go to church for 1 hour a week. And a lot of times you guys are like watching the clock right now. You're like, okay, it's going to be an hour and 10 minutes today. 1 hour a week, and maybe some of you have a daily reading plan, and you read the Bible, and you pray. Maybe. Probably some of you struggle with that too. Let me tell you something. 1 hour a week is not enough to overcome the world and its sinfulness. This is not going to get you where you need to be. It's a good place to start. Don't get me wrong. Love having you here. But this is not going to get you where you need to be. We are constantly surrounded by a world that is so messed up, and we need wise followers of Jesus Christ in our life. We need people influencing us. We need people praying for us. We need people that we can share our burdens with. We need people that we can say, hey, will you pray for me because I'm struggling here, that aren't going to judge us, that are going to love us. This is a model we follow. All of our kids are engaged. It's impossible to live with the wrong friends. So the first directional thought is walk with the wise, from Proverbs. Walk with people that are going to walk with wise. Second thing is ask. James 1:5 says this, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and will be given to you. You ever notice this? There's an evolution that happens with our kids and even with my family. But my wife and kids will ask me impossible questions. Does that ever happen to you? Like they will ask me questions that there's no possible way that I can know the answer today to. Like, hey, Dad, what is that battleship and what does it do? Well, and so here's what I've learned is you just say a bunch of junk with confidence. As long as you say it with confidence, then you're good. And they buy that for a while, because when your kids are little, right, they think you're a hero, right? Your kids believe everything you tell them, you know. But here's the thing. I have been blessed with a lot of really useless knowledge. And my family doesn't believe me all the time. But they're constantly asking me stupid questions like that. And we were down in Florida one time, and we were just sitting there. I was like, look at that tree. I was like, yep, that's a river birch. And they were like, what? I was like, I wasn't sure if it was, but I said it with confidence. They knew that it was. But you ever notice that growing up, how your kids look at you? When they're kids, they think you're a hero, right? Dad and moms, they think you know everything. And then you get to the point where you don't know anything, right? Because you don't get it, and you just don't get them, and you don't understand, and then you don't know anything. And then we reach a point in our age where we look back at our parents and we realize, and our moms and our dads, and we realize they did know something. After all, right? Here's the thing. Our goal as parents, Cheryl and I, one of the things is as our kids get older and they start to make decisions on their own, and that's a difficult point when you get to that point. And some of you have been there, but we're just now getting to that age where they're starting to be their own people, and we're praying that what we've taught them to this point is going to lead them in the right direction. They're going to continue to walk in their relationship with Christ. But our goal is to be I want to be a low maintenance a parent. Like I don't want to be. I don't want my kids to have to come to me and ask me questions about everything. We want them to get to the point where they make their own decisions, right? We want to get to the point where they are free to ask, and I'm not gonna offer advice to my kids sometimes until they ask, because sometimes I don't want to be that parent that's always butting in and saying, well, I wouldn't do it like that. You ever do that? Your parents ever do that? But at some point, we want that, right? We're not going to offer advice until they ask, but I will give them. Here's the thing. If they ask me, I will give them all the wisdom they need to help them not make the same mistakes that I made when I was their age. And God is just like that. When you ask God, He loves to share the wisdom. He loves to share it, but sometimes He's not going to share it unless we ask for it. We have to ask. Where you get this wisdom every single day from the Word, He's a good shepherd, and He will lead us where we need to go. Psalms 32:8 says this, the Lord says this, I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise you and watch over you, but we have to ask him for it. He wants us to ask. He wants us to need him. He wants us to hit our knees and say, God, give me wisdom to face this decision. The last thing I want to share is this. Decide. Make a decision. You know, anybody see Karate Kid? I like the original one, not the remade one. Like the very original one. Mr. Miyagi, love that guy. Some good advice there, right? I don't know if you remember this one. Mr. Miyagi says this, Daniel-san must talk. Walk on the road right side, safe. Walk on the road left side, safe. Walk in middle, sooner or later, get squished like grape. Thank you. That's my best. I'll be here all week. Some really good advice, right? Some really good advice there. Don't be afraid to make a choice. Pick one side or the other. Take the left side, you're safe. Take the right side, you're on the fence, you're going to get squished like grape. Some really good advice. The biggest danger is when we make no choice and walk down the middle of the road. Make a choice, make a call. How do I know God? Me, is it God or the devil? And I think sometimes we get in this thing where we're facing a decision. We're like, oh God, how do I know? And we just can't make the decision. We're torn, is this me or God? And let me give you a little tip. Where there is no moral command, meaning that God didn't say specifically don't do this, or he didn't say specifically do this, where there is no moral command, God will give us wisdom to choose. He's created us that way. He's given us that ability if we ask for it. Love and trust, but you decide. God could have pre-programmed us, but what he wanted us to do instead was to have free choice and make a decision on our own. You want that for your kids, don't we? You ever have that person at work that can't do anything without, hey, is this how you do this? Yes, for the 100th time. Like you want those people at work that are free to make a decision. I think God wants that from us. I'm going to ask the band to come. 1 Thessalonians 3:1 says this, and this is perfect. Talking to the Thessalonians here, and then they said this in Thessalonians. He said, so when we could stand it no longer, we thought it best to be left by ourselves in Athens. So they were making a decision. These people here in Corinthians were making this decision. And they basically said, you know what? We thought about it. We considered it. We just thought it was best. God didn't direct us. He didn't tell us what to do. He didn't give us any direction. In fact, we just had to make a decision. We just made a decision and went with it. And there are going to be times when you just have to make a decision and go with it and trust that God will direct and lead your path to whatever it is in your life. Maybe a bad decision, maybe one of those situations in your life you look back on and you go, you know what? I'm wiser today because of that decision I made then. I've had times in my life when God has directed me and I can feel him moving me in a certain direction and I can say without a shadow of a doubt, this is what God wanted me to do. But there have been times in my life when he doesn't say a thing. And he's quiet. And he's just trusting me to make the right decision. You just have to make a decision and move forward. We want that from our kids, and God's no different. We may make a mistake, we get wisdom. You know, if you make a mistake, the outcome of that is, yeah, you make a mistake, but you get wisdom. Don't we? Many of you earlier just said, yeah, a lot of the wisdom that I have today, that I can draw from today, and those experiences are from really bad decisions that I made in my past. And we learn from that. So what happens? You know, you make a bad, you get an extra bill in the mail, you have to go an extra semester at school, make a mistake, maybe you have an extra kid, I don't know. But here's the thing, our God is with us. Did you love that? Even if I don't get it right, he will make my path straight. How do you get God's perfect will? You serve him perfectly in the moment. God will help you be who you want to be so that you can do what he wants you to do. Help me do it the right way, and you will lead me in the right ways. We walk, we ask, we decide. I ask you to stand this morning. Leave you with Psalms chapter 32, verse 8 this morning. It says, the Lord says, I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. So whatever it is, whatever decision you're facing this week, I don't know what it is. It's probably 100 different things in a crowd this size. But you can trust God with it. It may not always be the right decision, but he will give you the wisdom to decide if you ask for it. Walk with the right people. Talk with the right people. Get people in your life who are wise. Ask them. Walk with them. Pray with them. And then just make a decision and trust that God will make your path straight. Let me pray with you this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your love and your grace and your patience with us. Thank you for loving us, Jesus. Lord, I just pray if there's somebody here this morning that doesn't know you, Lord, that they would find a place here at Salem Grace that they could learn, that they could become, walk into a relationship with you. Jesus, maybe there's somebody here this morning that's facing a really, really difficult decision. Lord, I just pray that you would give them the wisdom that they need to make the right decision. Help them to ask you for that wisdom. Help them to walk with people and find people in their lives, Lord, that can help walk aside them and give them direction. Lord, I pray that you would continue to walk with us and make our path straight. Help us to learn from the mistakes we've made. Give us wisdom that we need, Lord, to be good decisions maker and the wisdom to discern your will for our life. Pray that you would go with us today. Be with our mothers this morning. I pray that you would make this day special for them. Lord, we're so grateful for those Christian mothers in our lives and people that and how they've guided and directed us our entire lives. Thank you so much for your love and your grace. Go with us this day, and may we give all the praise and glory to you. In your name I pray.